My name is Mark Roberts, president of Art Leather Manufacturing Company. The video you are about to see was recorded live by Michael Friedman during his lecture tour entitled "What's Wrong with This Picture?" This presentation was seen by more than 5,000 photographers in 29 cities all across North America. Michael has a very unique message on how to use albums to increase the sales of portraiture. Let's go now to Chicago, Illinois, where Art Leather's regional sales representative, Charlie Chase, has just finished introducing Michael.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Charlie, very much indeed. That's a very warm welcome, and thank all of you, too. Yes, Charlie has introduced me, and for those of you who don't know me, and that will be most of you, I am Mike Friedman. I actually feel, in one respect, that Charlie has done us all, you and I, a slight disservice. Because if I were sitting where you were, what I would want to hear is that he has brought you this speaker with a health warning. And that warning is that this speaker could damage your business. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I know, because I've sat where you are far more commonly than I've stood up here, that when I'm in an audience and I listen to some wonderful speakers, beautiful work, fantastic ideas, what I really want to know is how can I evaluate? What yardstick is there for me to assess the caliber of what I'm hearing? That's what I want to know when I'm where you are. And for that reason, I will be sharing many facts and figures with you this evening. And when I do this, the reason I'm explaining it now is that it's not to boast. Obviously not. It's to share. It's to help. It's to assist. It's so that you can decide where you are in relation to me. Some of you in this room, one or two perhaps, maybe more, will be ahead of me in my story. And I salute you. Some of you will be alongside me. Some of you will be just behind. Many of you will be at the beginning of my story, possibly working from home, just as Paul Kay, my partner, did when he started. And wherever you are in this tale, you are me and I am you. So why do I say a health warning, and what are these statistics? You've heard some of them, you've read some of them. For example, the gross revenue of the 3 companies with which I'm involved, you've read, exceeded last year $5 million. Wonderful. Sheer flattery. All that does is to give you a sense of scale, size. But it doesn't really tell you what you want to know. What you want to know is this guy making a profit? Isn't it? Absolutely. Yes. Well, I'm very pleased to share with you that in spite of the economic backdrop in the UK, which actually is more severe than it is here, still. We're coming out of recession, but only slowly. And last year we were still quite deep in recession, and in spite of that, our companies together made a profit in the order of $500,000. When I joined my partner, Paul Kay, who is the portrait photographer with whom I'm very closely associated, when I joined him 20 years ago, he couldn't afford to pay me a dime. Now you can associate with that, you can identify with that, can't you? In fact, all he could give me was the money for the gas in my car. And I worked for that for 3 months. That's how we started together. So you see, we are human. I'll give you another fact. This wonderful new company, which you've been reading about, our version of the glamour style photography, CoverGirl International, which grossed $4 million last year on its own and made a profit on its own something in the order of $300,000. Only started 2 years ago. Now, if we can do that, there are others in this room who can do the same thing. And you begin to see why these facts and figures are actually helpful. And I can share another fact with you. And that is, as I've mentioned, that company only began 2 years ago. And in its first year, it lost as much money as it made in its second. So we really are fallible, aren't we? It isn't all easy, but it's a real world out there. And it's that real world that I'll be talking about this evening. Now, what is my job specification? I have a number. Yes, I am the marketing director for Paul K Studio and have been for 20 years. I am also the chairman of this new company, CoverGirl International. I am also the co-publisher with Paul K and writer with Paul K of the Photographer's Bulletin. And I know for a fact that several of you in this room are already subscribers to the Photographer's Bulletin. This is something which Paul and I have been writing for the past 5 years. And more than 1,000 photographers in 36 different countries are now reading this every month. I'm also a fellow of the British Institute of Professional Photography, the BIPP, which is the equivalent of your PPA. Now that's interesting because I don't take a single photograph. I handle the marketing and sales. So how can I be a fellow of the BIPP? Let me explain. In England, we have a very special fellowship in management in photography. I am one of half a dozen people in the world that have this honor, and it isn't just an honor. I had to deliver a thesis, and I failed first time. I'm particularly proud of my fellowship of the BIPP. I also serve on the BIPP Council, and I am the acting chairman of the marketing committee of the BIPP, and in the past 4 years, we have doubled the membership of the BIPP, and I'm especially proud of that. So that tells you some of the things with which I'm involved. Before I go any further, I think it's more than appropriate that I should pause for a second and just ask us all to thank very much our sponsors, not just mine, but yours as well, Art Leather and PPA. Now Charlie Chase has introduced us this evening, and he is really embodying the whole of Art Leather. As you know, this has occurred in many places around the country, and the warmth with which I have been received has been outstanding. And may I say that what looks simple on this stage, intentionally so, actually takes many, many hours to set up. And Charlie and his team, and Art Leather and their team throughout the country, have been extraordinary in making this happen. And we all owe them a bit of an applause. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Art Leather. And of course, their joint sponsors, thank you, PPA. In order to arrange this series of lectures, I went last year in the summer to the PPA convention to meet with Art Leather. And on that occasion as well, unfortunately, my wife Pam couldn't attend. We have 2 children at home. And it just isn't practical for Pam to be away for 8 weeks, which is the length of time I'm away from home. And she couldn't come to Orlando either in the summer, unfortunately. And I think the ladies will identify with this. When Pam drove me to the airport, when I went to Orlando, she obviously knew I was going to have a great time in Orlando, but she was particularly concerned that I should behave myself. And I assured her that I would. I promised her sincerely I would. And when I got to Orlando, it was a very, very enjoyable convention. And I did behave myself, and I'm not telling you any more about that. But when I flew home at the end of the week, Pam obviously met me at Heathrow again, and we drove home together. And this time, she wanted to know whether I had behaved myself. And I think I assured her that I did. I think I succeeded, because she gave me a very warm homecoming indeed. I'm not telling you any more about that either. But we have a very large dog called Toby. He's a golden Labrador. And in the middle of the night, the dog barked. And I turned over in my jet-lagged slumber, and I said, "My God, is that your husband?" And Pam said, no, it can't be. He's in Orlando. I do wish to assure you that that is a joke, that Pam and I are very happily married. She's a delightful lady, very, very beautiful person indeed, and we're very sad that she can't be here sharing the fun with us all. Now, what is the fun that we're going to have tonight? What is our little agenda? We're going to start with the aid of a few slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you what I call a static travel experience. You're going to stay in your chairs, but with the slides, I'm going to take you to London, and I'm going to show you round the Paul Kay studio. And then, after that, I'm going to show you around the CoverGirl studio. And still with the slides, we're going to discuss 8 or 9 ideas on what's wrong with this picture. And that will fascinate you. It will intrigue you because it's going to be a different eye. It's going to be from the sales point of view. That is my area of specialization, and it will be fresh and new for you. Then we'll have the lights up, and for the remainder of the first half, we're going to discuss what you really want to know, and that is how. How does he bring the people into the studio? How does he bring them into Paul Kay? How does he bring them into CoverGirl? And I'm going to tell you the role that these albums play in doing that. And then, at the end of the first half, I shall talk to you about the photographer's bulletin. And if you've enjoyed the first half, after the break, you will love the second half of the evening, because in the second half of the evening, we're going to have sales tips. 50 sales tips, bang, 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 1 a minute, right through the second half. And that is like a crescendo. So you will really, really enjoy the second half, even more than the first. But without more ado, let's take you to London. Let's have the lights down and show you around the Paul Kay studio. There you are. Welcome to Bond Street. This shop is located right in the heart of London, in Bond Street, which is like Fifth Avenue in New York. It is a very, very upmarket shopping area. People sightsee here, and people from all over the world will walk past this window. It's 450 square feet, that's all. So many of you can identify with it. We have another 450 square feet in the basement, and that's where the photography is done. Now, I'm based here. This is at Park Road by Regent's Park. And you'll notice that this is a triple unit. The right-hand unit is the gallery area where I sit. The middle unit is the original unit that Paul Kay took just before I joined him 20 years ago. Prior to that, he'd been photographing the babies in the prams outside the hospitals. And after that, he graduated to photographing probably half a dozen families a day in their homes around North London. And finally, he leased that middle shop. Then we acquired the one on the left, then we acquired the one on the right. So the middle one today is where the photography is done, and the one on the left is where Paul Kay sits. So that gives you a feel for the place as you see the inside. Here is our assistant making an appointment. And here are the clients arriving in the studio to have their sitting. Now, Paul Kay is the man on the left in that slide, and the client is not pointing at Paul, he's pointing beyond Paul at the black man in the picture on the extreme left, who is a very famous footballer called Garth Crooks. And we have a policy of displaying famous faces in our window because this is exactly what happens. We become famous by association, and our clients recognize them and identify with them. So the family goes into the back area to start preparing their clothes, and Paul immediately, in his pre-session discussion with them about what he and they are going to do during this hour or so, the first thing he discusses is the albums. And here he's showing them the 8x10 album, and here the 11x14. He also shows them the 20x16, and the children here are actually touching the albums, and this is most important. I feel touch is essential in all selling. Now, this is a view through the window from that waiting area into where the pictures are taken. I always describe this as the least important room in the studio. And in come the twins. Now, Paul is excellent with detail. He can set up a picture, he can break it down, and he can rebuild it again, and you wouldn't know that he'd changed a thing. It can look identical to the one before. Not that he necessarily needs to do that, but when he has twins like this, he does it on purpose. He actually moves the children around, and when they're identical, the parents don't even know that it's happened. And it's happened again. He's switched them. Now, in comes Dad. Paul is showing him where and how he would like him to sit. So Dad takes his position and Paul just attends to a little detail. In comes Mum. In comes the first child and the second child. All that's happened here is that you can see that it's the same the world over. Just to give you the feel for how Paul does it. Now, at the end of the sitting, every time, and this is most important, Paul will sit with Mum and he will say, now, who else do you know who is thinking about having some pictures done at this studio? And he sits there with his pen poised and a piece of paper, and out comes the file of facts, and he'll almost every time pick up a name and address of somebody else who's thinking of having it done. This is how we drive our business, by referrals. We don't do any advertising at all. Here we are a week later, and the clients have come back to the studio, and now they're coming to the gallery side, into my side of the studio. So I show them that their album of proofs is ready. The first thing we do is we look quickly through all the pictures. Then I pull the album apart and I reorganize the pictures back into the sequence in which they were taken so that I can say, which one do you prefer, this one or this one? Gradually, we build up a short list on the table of their favorite pictures. We take 15 to 20, and very often the short list will be 10 or 15. There's a long short list. Then I will grab the 40 by 50 and I will stand it there and I'll say, now, which would you prefer, the 30 by 40 or the 40 by 50? She wanted the 24 by 30. And then, after we've handled the wall portraits, we move on to the shelf portraits. And here I am displaying or describing the 15 by 12. Now, over here, you use the 11 by 14. For some reason, you've got it wrong.
Do you get more money for that?
I'm sure not. But that size is very nice, and we display it framed, and we don't display anything smaller than 15 by 12 on the basis that our clients buy what we show them. And at the very end of the sale, I bring out this little concertina wallet, and it makes a very nice add-on sale after they've chosen everything else. So we add up the order, and would you like to pay by check or by credit card? He chose to pay by credit card, and so they took home this beautiful wall portrait. And I think if you look carefully, you'll notice that this picture of the twins that they've chosen, the children are looking straight at the camera. But if you look behind me here, just for a second, if you look over here, this is a picture of the same children. Now, clearly they had a choice. The parents had a choice between looking off camera and over here looking on camera. And I will refer to this more than once during the evening, but you'll notice that they've chosen the one that is looking at the camera. This is a real situation, and this is what happened. And you can see that this family is very happy with their choice. I think even the dog likes it. And that is a typical day at Paul K. Studio. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over to the other studio at CoverGirl. And that is only a quarter of an hour away. It's by Oxford Circus. This was by Madame Tussauds, by Regent's Park, and we're just going to, it's a quarter of an hour walk over to Oxford Circus, and just 2 minutes from Oxford Circus is this beautiful new studio run by the same team of directors. And I'm stressing that because you're going to see a completely different strategy. We're going to move from this carriage trade upmarket studio to this middle market, local market, glamour style. And here, we're driven by advertising. So, 2 different types of advert. These are appearing in the Sunday color supplements and in the women's magazines. And we also do a certain amount of black and white advertising in the local press as well. Here is some of the PR that results from it all. As a result, we are receiving 750 letters a week into that studio. And here's a young lady who has seen the advert, and so she decides to phone and ask for some more information. Our assistants here are on duty from 9 in the morning right through till 10 o'clock at night, receiving and making these phone calls. As a result of this call, she is sending off an information pack giving more information about what will happen. The client obviously likes it because she's phoning back again to arrange a time for her sitting. And here is our assistant receiving that call, and she's just handling on the desk there the computer-generated diary, which looks like that. Now, we have 4 camera rooms and 6 diaries. In other words, there are 2 phantom diaries. This is because we know that about 1/3 of our clients drop out before the day. They may just postpone, they may not even cancel, but it comes to the same thing. So by running 2 phantom diaries, we're able to move people across from them into the real diaries, and as a result, we operate at between 95% and 100% occupancy. So here is the client arriving on her day. Now, she may have come from Birmingham or Manchester, or she may be local. She takes herself into the studio, and there it is. Now, this is 5,500 square feet. It cost $750,000 to make it look like this, but we did not spend a dime. We are the beneficiaries of the recession. And I mean that. We are the beneficiaries in the sense that the previous owners, a fashion house, developed this site as a flagship headquarters for themselves, and it didn't work, it didn't come off. So they put it back on the market, and they weren't even able to obtain their money back. They could only get the rent. And we eventually took it just for the rent, but we insisted that we would only have it for an 18-month lease because we knew how deep the recession is. And we were right. 18 months later, quite recently, we have negotiated a 1/3 reduction in the rent. We are the beneficiaries of the recession. Here is our client being received by our receptionists here, and she takes herself downstairs, and you get a feeling for the ambiance of the place. I think she's eyeing the coffee machine. So she helps herself to a cup of coffee, and she has a quick look at the albums there, and in comes the makeup artist to discuss her day. And she's going to discuss or describe the makeover session and what looks she expects, and whether she's brought any of her own props or clothes and so on. And then they go through together, and the client meets the photographer. It's a team of 2, makeup artist and photographer, who are going to work with this young client. So here is the before picture, and that's the makeup artist larking around. We ask the clients to come in with no makeup at all, and their hair washed but not set. We don't cut the hair, but the first thing we do, obviously, is to set the hair, and then on goes the base, the eyes, and then the cheeks, the lips, and we're off. We're going to create 6 different looks, and we're going to do this within half an hour. It's a team of 2. The photographer is taking the pictures, the makeup artist is attending to the detail, and incidentally, this soft look is our style. This is intentional. And you'll notice that the makeup artist even changes the hairstyle within that half hour. 30 different pictures, 6 different looks. And this bomber jacket is very popular. You're too late, guys, it's ours. It's what I call a hot shot. Put them in the bomber jacket and they buy it every time. It's very, very popular. We also use black and white film and put it through our color process to create the sepia look. This adds to the sense of variety. It's important. Now, at the end of the sitting, we remove all the makeup. They leave the studio the same way they came in. There are 2 reasons for this. One is that the makeup is dramatic makeup. It's very heavy base, and it's not the kind of makeup you walk around the streets of London in the daytime in. But the other reason, which I think is even more important, is that this retains the sense of mystery and excitement and expectation but for the pictures when they arrive. So while the makeup is being removed, the film goes downstairs into our basement area where we have a darkroom, and we actually create the slides, the negatives, and then the slides on the same day, within an hour and a half or so. Hour and a half, and they're ready. So she will take herself, after her makeup has been removed, she'll take herself out for a quick lunch break. Here she is, right by Oxford Circus. You can even see the London Transport bus on the left-hand side of that slide. She'll do a little bit of window shopping. And yes, there are sales in London year-round at the moment, just like everywhere else. Meanwhile, back at the base, our young man here is making her slides. This can be done in just over an hour. So she's come back from her lunch, and the lady who is going to project her images up on the screen arrives, greets her, and takes her through to the projection room. And what she does is to, first of all, show all 30 slides straight away up on the screen. The next thing she does is to show the albums. Here she's showing the 20 by 16 album. Here the 11 by 14. Here the 8 by 10 presentation album. And then she takes all the slides out of the projector. She's projected them first. She takes them out of the projector and lays them on this light box. This is a very important slide. I'm going to ask you please to retain this slide in your memory, because I will refer to it many times. She takes the pictures out of the projector, lays them on this light box where they're all shouting, "Buy me." And we've just been discussing the albums, and the first thing that she offers her client is the opportunity of buying an album of the whole set. It's the first thing she does. So there it is. Numbers 1 to 30, one of each, 10 by 8, basic black, which is the presentation album, and it's the first thing that we offer. Then we handle the wall portrait, and then we handle the shelf portraits. And as a result of an order like that, she has to sign a credit agreement. So she pays for the deposit with a credit card here, and that is the end of a very happy day for her. It's been a great experience. They're friends. They're great friends, and she will now take herself home again to Birmingham or Manchester, wherever it is she's come from, and she will wait for 2 or 3 weeks until her pictures arrive, and they'll be posted to her. And that completes, as it were, the introduction both of myself and of those two businesses. Thank you very much. That's charming. I promised you that I was now going to come on to this section, what's wrong with this picture? And the question is a rhetorical one. Please allow me to answer it each time I ask it. I know you'll know the answers and you'll have many answers, but let's hear mine as well. The first idea that I'm going to deal with is how we, in our studio, choose the samples to hang on the wall portraits on canvas that hang on the walls in our studio. And I've constructed that sentence very carefully, because I'm not here to tell you how you should do anything this evening. I am here to share with you how we do things in our studio, and that's what I intend to do. And I should take great care to hold on to that construction. Now, the way we choose the samples in our studio is that I do it, because I am the person who is with the client. I know the pictures that are beginning to sell more, the new hotshots, if you like, the ones that sell every time that Paul takes them. And when I spot a new one like this, I will simply add it on to the order, and it'll come back from the laboratory with the rest of the pictures as a sample. It'll be ready, framed, canvassed, ready to hang on the wall. So I will hang it on the wall, and I may go home early that day. And when there's a new sample like that, sometimes when I come in the morning, what I'll find is that Paul Kay has literally crossed it out on the wall. Can you believe it? But he does. Now, what is he saying? What is wrong with this picture? Now, don't answer it. Let me tell you. I mean, as photographers, you will be sympathetic to his point of view. You see, he wants the very best examples of his work on the wall. He wants to be proud of it. But from the sales point of view, this is ideal as a sample. Photographically, yes, this forehead is flared out and it could be better printed. The jacket could be printed in and we could have far more attractive picture. Of course, Paul's right, photographically. But these are very rarefied points from a client's point of view. The client will only perceive these things when we tell them. Now, what I like to be able to do is to take the client's proof of this picture, and when she chooses it, say to her, ah, yes, now look, this is the size that I would recommend, and I bring this one across and I show her, and I'm able to look her in the eye and say, and mean it, and be correct, and yours will be even nicer. You see, that's the point. We hold a bit in reserve. The pictures that hang on our walls are not the examples of our award-winning pictures, our best pictures. We're showing our average, so that it is highly likely that when a client chooses her favorite, her best, it's going to be even better, it's going to please her more. We under-promise and we over-provide. And that's why that is actually an ideal sample. Nothing wrong with it at all. So let's move on to this one. What is wrong with this picture? I'm going to ask you, if you will, to imagine or to accept that this picture is perfect. And if some of you are struggling with that, let me help you. Those of you who are struggling, imagine, if you will, that you took this picture, all right? And therefore it's perfect. Are we there now? Okay. We're looking at a picture that is perfect. And still I say, what's wrong with it? And let me answer my own question. What is wrong with this picture is that this young man is looking at the teddy bear that the photographer's assistant is waving top right. Now, you remember I drew your attention to the picture that the clients chose in the Paul K studio. Those two twins were looking at the camera. That's the one they chose. I know that if I have two pictures side by side of this young man, one like this and one looking at the camera, it is the one looking at the camera that he will choose. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take these pictures. What I'm saying is that in our studio, we discipline ourselves to take no more than 1/4 looking off camera, and 3/4 of the pictures that we provide for our clients are looking at camera. Like this. Now, wherever you are in this room, this young lady is looking at you. And that is the quality which we use in our studios to sell our pictures. She is saying, didn't I do well? Aren't I clever? Now, we don't do that looking at the ground. We look at the people who mean something to us in our life and convey these messages. And yet I still say to you, what is wrong with this picture? And I'm not talking about the verticals or anything technical. You get that all the time. You don't need that from me. You know all that. So what am I talking about here? What is wrong with this picture, and I'm not being facetious, is that it's not this one. And this is a message which is even more meaningful for you than it is for us. Possibly we've gathered this so readily because we don't have as much opportunity as you do. You've got this wonderfully developed market with high school seniors. I don't mean when you go into the schools to do it. I mean those among us, and there'll be many in this room, who are inviting the high school seniors into our studios. And we're giving them a little bit more upmarket service, aren't we? We're giving them something that we're very proud of. It's excellent. And they want it too. Now, you've got this tremendous opportunity. We have it far more rarely. These graduation pictures aren't nearly as common for us, so we've had to make the most of them. And the way we do that is that whenever any of these young people phone us and ask if we can do graduation pictures, of course we can. Come in with your graduation gown. And by the way, we say, we don't charge per head. So do come with mum and dad as well, and bring any brothers and sisters. You will love it, because we will take pictures not just of you in your graduation gown, but of you with mum and dad, and you with the whole family, and mum and dad together, and so on. And look what happens. You get so much more pleasure for the client, and you get so much more product for us to provide. That's what it's about. And here we are. They've got a whole family group. We've got mum and dad together. It's perfectly clear that this has got to give more pleasure and be more valuable for us. And that's how we're handling it in our studio. And if I were handling high school seniors, I know I would be looking at this very, very seriously. What then is wrong with this picture? When we do group pictures in our studios, we sell 24 by 30s, 30 by 40s, and 40 by 50s of those groups. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times I have sold a wall portrait of a group of smaller than 24 by 30 on the wall in my entire 20 years with Paul Kay. How do we achieve that? Well, the answer is that we give more space than this around this picture. There's no way I can look a client in the eye and say that would look magnificent as a 24 by 30, because it wouldn't. Look at it. It doesn't. But with the space, the proper space around it that we've actually cropped off to create this slide, it would. And in fact, when we do groups, we take a few maybe close up, but the majority will be sitting half length and sitting full length. And this helps with this strategy of creating these larger wall portraits. So that's all that's wrong with that one. What then's wrong with this one? Going on to the shelf portraits. Well, it's delightful. It's beautifully packaged, and we spent a great deal of money on the design of this packaging and a great deal of money on the boxes themselves, because we know that this increases the perceived value of our work. We know the importance of this, and I'm very proud of it. It's in a lovely gilt frame with non-reflective glass. It's grand, it looks wonderful. So what's wrong with it? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's a 10 by 8. Now, you call that an 8 by 10. You've got that one wrong as well. It's an 8 by 10. We don't show that to our clients. I've made this slide specially for you again. If I were making this slide seriously, the box at the back, the 15 by 12, would be open, and that's the picture I would be illustrating, because I know that people buy what I show them. Right, this is an interesting one. What's wrong with this picture? And imagine again, please, that you've taken it, and therefore it's perfect, all right? This is a description of Mum. Mum is the driving force. She is the motivator. She's in charge of the love, the affection, the warmth in the family, and very often she is the inspiration for the sitting itself. She phones, she arranges it, the family comes in, we take these wonderful pictures in our studio, the proof album arrives, they sit down with me, I lay out, you saw me doing it, I lay out the pictures on the table, lovely pictures of Mum, lovely pictures of Dad together, children together, separately, family groups. Then they order 30 by 40 of Dad for the office, family group 40 by 50, each of the children 20 by 24 to go up the staircase, the children together for the grandparents on the shelf and for the aunts and uncles. It's a wonderful order. And there, sitting on the table, is this picture of Mum, still unordered, shortlisted, but still unordered. And what does she say? And when I put the words in her mouth, you'll identify with it immediately. Gee, she says, why is it that I love the pictures of the whole family, and all the pictures that I'm in, I ruin them? That's what she says, isn't it? Very often. Too often. And the interesting thing about that problem is that out of that problem, the answer to that problem was so good that we were all of us delighted that the problem ever existed. The answer, incidentally, was yours. It wasn't mine. You gave me the answer. Subscribers, American subscribers to our bulletin, started writing about the glamour style of photography. You see, all women, all ladies know that if only they had the time, they could look so much more wonderful than they do when they see themselves in photographs. They know this. And the glamour style of photography delivers this for them. They take the time. We pamper them. We show them the before picture. We show them the expectation of what they're going to look like afterwards. And so, because of the right handling, they have a positive attitude towards it. And 9 ladies out of 10 end up buying those pictures. And there it is. A multi-million-dollar industry has grown out of the solution to that problem. And we have 4 of it. And still, I say to you, what's wrong with that picture? And let me answer it. That picture is so bad that, in fact, Victoria Mull, who is the producer of this program, had me spend a whole day of studio time creating it, just to illustrate the point for the promotion of the talk. We don't take it. Now, what's wrong? What am I saying is wrong? Well, let me answer the question. What is wrong with that picture is that it's a profile. Now, I'm not saying to you that it's a bad profile, although it may be, or that it's a good profile. What I'm saying to you is that it is a profile. It's a photographer's picture. And we don't take it because we know that when a lady wants to say, "I love you," she looks you in the eye. And she doesn't look at the floor. That's the point. And here I'm going to show you 30 pictures taken in the CoverGirl studio. You will find that only 2 or 3, less than a quarter, are looking off camera because that's what we ration to ourselves. There's nothing wrong with them, but the majority are saying, "Buy me. Aren't I beautiful?" Remember, these are all going to land on that light box. And each one of these pictures is going to shout, "Buy me," on that light box. And this is the atmosphere of 20 years of knowing a friend. And that's what we create in our pictures. That sense of friendship, that atmosphere. You're looking at 6 different looks. Within those looks, I will agree with you, there is quite a limited variety. But remember, this is a formula. This has been created within half an hour. And the sense of variety is, I think, in possibly more than one hairstyle. And the sepia also helps to add to the feeling of variety. But the vast majority of the pictures are saying, "Aren't I beautiful?" And wherever you're sitting in the room, this young lady is looking at you, and her pictures are shouting, "Buy me." So that is what was wrong, in our view, with the profile. Not wrong. Wonderful pictures, but they're for photographers. They're different objective. And for our clients, that is what we provide. And so we move back into the classical studio. And I ask you again, what is wrong with these pictures? Well, these have come straight off the shelf. There's nothing special about these. To illustrate this talk, I've simply gone to our shelf and I've grabbed a set of pictures and I have taken them out of the album, and that's what's wrong. They were in an album. But to illustrate the point, I've simply taken them off the page, laid them out like this to create this slide for you. They're lovely. Look at the variety. Look at the control in the expressions. Not too smiley. Look at the consistency. Look at the detail. It's grand. But look what we've done to the perceived value. They look worthless because they're not in an album. Now that looks something. And still, I say, what's wrong with that picture? And funnily enough, it is a real question to you. And your answer is interesting, because if there were nothing wrong with this, you'd all be doing it. So there must be something wrong with this, because you're not all doing it. We are. And I'm going to deal with many of the reasons, many of the things that you may not have even thought about consciously. But as I deliver them, you will say yes and yes and yes, and I will answer them. Now, the first point that will be in many of your minds, especially those of you who are becoming more famous, becoming more established, you will know, when you look at last year's revenue, that you had a few, maybe 6, maybe 10, very good orders. And when you look at those very good orders, you will find that they traveled quite a long way because your reputation is spreading. And you may still be working at home and have this effect. No reason why not. You will find that the people who spend the most have traveled the first, made the greatest effort to come to your home or to your studio to be photographed by you. Now, the problem, you see, the first problem is with an album, that it takes time to produce. So these people, these good customers who come from so far, they may come from 1,000 miles away or 2,000 miles away. In this country, that's very possible. In England, of course, they're coming to us from all over the world in London. So we know the problem well. And you have it as well. And it's one of the reasons you're not using this album, and it's not a reason. I'll show you what we do. We use somebody else's pictures. When a client like this is traveling away at midday, they may be going to Gatwick Airport at lunchtime, and Paul is photographing them at 9:30 in the morning. After he's finished, after the end of the sitting, he will bring them from the studio into my gallery area. And we will sit them down on that couch, you saw it on the screen, and I will go to the shelf and I will take someone else's pictures. And I will, let's imagine this is Jim and Joan, all right? Jim and Joan are sitting on the couch with me, and I will say, Jim, what Paul has just done for you is he has taken a series of pictures. Here is your head and shoulders. It's somebody else's. But I lay it on the table. Here is your head and shoulders. Here is your sitting half length. Here is your standing 3/4 length. Joan, here is your head and shoulders. Somebody else's pictures. Here is your head and shoulders. Here is your sitting half length. Here is your standing 3/4 length. I do it for the children and the group pictures, and I've laid them all out on the table. And then I say, Jim, this picture of you, it's not his picture, this picture of you sitting, if I were doing this for me, I would, and I walk over to a 30 by 40, I would do it in this frame and in this size. And by this time, I know that they are seeing themselves in these pictures. I know this because when I said to one customer, this picture of you, I would do it in this size, he said, but I don't like this picture, I want that one. You see? It's the power of suggestion. I'm selling imagination. I call this the intangible sale. You can't touch it. But I take orders for many thousands of dollars this way. What we're doing is we're organizing the shape of their order, the size of their pictures, and the frames, and the quantity. And they pay me in full on the day of the sitting. They haven't seen anything. And they go home, they're 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles away. We send them their album. A week later, they phone me, and they give me the negative numbers to fill into the order. I do this very commonly, so that is not a problem. We handle it very successfully that way. And that completes the section on what's wrong with this picture. And if we may have the lights up, we'll move straight in to what I promised you. I said I was going to tell you how we bring people into those studios, into the Paul Kay studio and into the CoverGirl studio. And this really is a marketing question. What you're wanting to know is how we get into that circle that is our daily routine and make it larger. That's what we want to know. And how are we doing that? Well, as I say, this is a marketing question, and marketing is the whole, W-H-O-L-E, the whole, of which selling is a part. That's what I think marketing is. It's nothing very technical. Marketing is also the whole of which photography is a part. Now that is interesting. It's the whole. So let's look at it for a second. And we're asking ourselves, how are we going to make this thing bigger? Well, the first way I know that I'm going to increase the value of our camera time is by increasing the product range. The more product, the more we're going to sell, it's obvious. And the history of our product range is very fascinating. Historically, we were all selling shelf portraits. And then somebody had this bright idea that we could sell, they didn't even have a word for it. They had this idea that we could sell big ones. And when I first joined Paul Kay, that's what he called them. And very soon afterwards, we were all calling them wall portraits, weren't we? Around the world, we call these wall portraits. It's the high-ticket item, and it changed our lives. And so we had a two-pronged product range, because what it did, the need to sell this, caused us to forget this. Because many of us have a feeling that this will interfere with this, and this is the high-ticket item. But it is not a two-pronged product range. It is a three-pronged product range. There are shelf portraits, there are wall portraits, and there are album portraits. And that is a concept. And when you have that concept in place, it becomes extremely interesting what you can do with it. Let me first of all describe the sizes of those pictures. The shelf portraits, 10 by 8, 12 by 10, 15 by 12. That's our shelf range. On the wall, 20 by 24 or smaller. That's what we say on our price list, 20 by 24 or smaller. 24 by 30, 30 by 40, and 40 by 50. Now, what do I mean by 20 by 24 or smaller? Because obviously, clients come into our studio and they say occasionally, don't you do anything smaller? May I? Sometimes they even know the size, and they say, may I have a 20 by 16? Of course they may. But it'll cost the same as a 20 by 24, won't it? And all of a sudden, they realize that a 20 by 24 is exactly what they wanted. And if your clients are buying smaller sizes than our clients, then it is because you're showing them smaller sizes than we do. That's all it is. And so we say the same thing with 10 by 8 as well. We say 10 by 8 or smaller, 20 by 24 or smaller. That's how we do it. Let's move on to this overview. In order to convey it to you, I'm going to become a little bit extrovert, all right? When I'm talking about Paul Kay, I'm going to jump into this spotlight over here, all right? And you'll know that when I'm here, we are discussing Paul Kay Studio. And when I jump over into this spotlight here, I'm discussing CoverGirl International, all right? That will just help you, because they're two very distinct stories, and it will just help to separate them visually as well. Right, Paul Kay Studio. Hi. This is, in Paul Kay, we are a team of 3 people. There is Paul Kay, who takes the photographs. There is Michael Friedman, myself. I handle the sales and the marketing. And we have one assistant who assists. And that's it. It's a team of 3 people. We do no advertising. It is all done by referral. It is done by networking. We are faxing. We are telephoning. We are writing to people. We do no promotions. We keep our time free. When we're not photographing or selling, we are talking to clients. And we are targeting clients. We are very top end of the market. We only handle 4 or 5 sittings a week for most of the year. Many times, none in a week. In the high season, of course, in the summer months when the kids are out of school, the parents are visiting from overseas and they're in London, we get very busy. And that can be 10 or 15 sittings in a week, and we hate it. Rest of the year, we are jogging along very nicely, but if we rest on our laurels and we stop contacting clients, we die like anybody else. The result is that we get many sales that will be quite small, maybe hundreds of dollars, maybe 1,000 or so. It's actually quite difficult to get away from us for less than 1,000 or so, but if you don't buy anything, you can do it. There's no obligation. What we're looking for are those 1 or 2 clients. And at the end of the year, we find each year that there have been 10 or 12 people who spend in the order of $20,000 because we target them. And do you know something very interesting? When we look at the people who've spent $20,000, they've almost always done it before. Now that is helpful because it means that we can focus our work. If people haven't been in touch with us, we'll make an excuse to write to them or speak to them on the phone anywhere in the world. Every 3 months or so. We keep ourselves in the front of their minds. They may not come in every year, they may come in every second year, every third year. But that's what we're doing. And we're asking for those referrals. You saw Paul doing it. And that is how we drive this business. And as a result, last year we took it over $1 million of gross revenue. Just 3 people. We don't do any production. That's done over there in our factory. Our factory is run by CoverGirl now. And the work arrives here ready to hang on the wall. We are just point of sale. That's how we keep our time free for our clients. And that is the Paul K business. Right. Over here. CoverGirl, hi. They use proofs. You saw him on the screen. You saw him using the album. He's a salesman. He uses proofs. We like trans proofs. What's going on? How can this be? How can you have 2 completely different policies? Well, here we've got a staff of 100 people. And they're all ladies. This is run by ladies, for ladies. And the staff find it much easier to transproof. Photographers find it much easier, if they're doing their selling, to transproof. This is in the local market, this CoverGirl business, and if we don't transproof, there's no real pressure to buy enlargements. Over there, the customers are leaving the country in a minute, so the proofing works quite well. But here, there's no natural pressure. So if they don't buy anything with transproofs, they get nothing. So we like transproofs, and we like them on the wall, slides, not electronic, because we feel that they're too small. So we like to transproof. And whether you proof or you transproof, it leads to these albums. This business, with 100 staff, is open 7 days a week. So some of the staff are working 4 days and some are working 3 days. They're part-timers. So think of it as 50 full-time staff, including the 14 who are doing the production, in our own laboratory. We have a separate laboratory 70 miles away, and the work comes down from the laboratory to this studio and to that studio to hang on the wall. Both studios are point of sale only. And in this studio, we are handling 250 women every week of the year. And as a result, we're grossing in the order of $80,000 a week. Every week of the year. Many weeks more. And every lady who comes into the studio, you saw it on the screen, is offered this album. And this presentation album, hold on a minute, many of you don't know what this is, do you? I'd like the art leather people just to shut their ears for a second. I'm going to interrupt myself. I want to discuss something privately. This is the presentation album in the 810 size. You may have seen it in the smaller size. Many of you may have never seen it in the 810 size. If you haven't, the reason is it's their cheapest album and they don't like showing it very much. We buy more of this than anything else. Our 250 ladies every week, 1 out of every 2 buys this. We are selling 125 of these albums every week of the year. And together with the Paul K Studio, you saw Paul showing the albums as well, together with the Paul K Studio, we are the biggest single user of albums for portraiture in the world. And I have a feeling that's why Art Leather have asked me to tell you how we do it. I'm in the middle now, they bring their people in by advertising. You saw it on the screen. They bring their people in by referral. Now, when they do that, the thing that they offer, let's run over there. Hi, back in Paul K, all right? I hope that wasn't too quick a shift. Here, in Paul K, we don't use the presentation album, we use this. And this is new. You've never seen this before. It's called the PK Preview Album. And the reason I know that you've not seen it before and that it is new is that it didn't exist before I arrived in this country. On the day I arrived, Mark Roberts, the president of Art Leather, and I sat down for a whole day creating the prototypes which resulted in this. We've been using, in London, we've been using a previous version which we had designed over there 10 years ago. We've been using something similar for 20 years. 10 years ago, we spent a whole year specifying what we wanted. And it took a year to get it right. And this, which was designed a few weeks ago when I arrived here, is an improvement on our specification. But it's called, and it's a great honor, it is called the PK Preview Album, and it is the first time that Art Leather have ever named a product for a photographer. And we drive our business with this album. You see, what happens is people phone our Paul K studio and they ask to make an appointment, and the answer is yes. Paul will take a series of 15 to 20 pictures for you, and we will put them in a beautiful album, and the pictures will be in color, the size of your hand, we say. The charge for this, and we tell them the price. Now let me convey the price to you. Think, if you will, of the price in your studio of an 11 by 14 picture, and multiply that by 3. And that figure is the equivalent of what we're charging in our studio for this. All right? Look at it. That's quite a lot of money. Not a single picture's been taken. What this is doing then is it's acting as a qualifier. It is sorting out the men from the boys. You see, somebody who is willing to do this, for them, money is no object. They're the people that we're looking for. So somebody who's willing to do this is even more likely to do something like that. That's the point. And we drive our business with the PK Preview Album. So that completes for you the overview. And at that stage, I could stop. And I could say to you, there you are, you've got it. Wonderful new concept, albums. Oh, terrific. Frankly, if I did that, it would be facetious to a point which I would view almost as criminal. There is absolutely no way that you could take that home and do it. There's so much more you need to know. You need to know how we're pricing those albums. You need to know how we're presenting the price to our clients. You need to know how we're using that PK Preview album, particularly, and the presentation album. And you need to know about this sample, this range of samples, and the history of that. Now, if in the course of describing those points to you, I repeat myself, I do not apologize, because I know that you need this. I know it will help you. So let's start with the pricing policy. And let's start actually with a couple of ideas about albums for portraiture. The portrait sitting is an event, just like the wedding is an event. Now, we've all taught our clients to have albums for weddings. We, Paul K and CoverGirl, have taught our clients to desire albums for the event of their sitting as well, their portrait sitting. It's there to be done. And the client wants it just as much because it's a very rare event. It's not something that happens every day, and they want the record when they're offered it. That's my first point. And my second point will interest you even more, because my second point is a photography point. For a minute, I'm not talking money. I'm talking photography. These portrait albums, for the first time in many decades, are an opportunity for us as photographers to use all our hard-earned images. It's going to change our lives, our working day as a portrait photographer. All of a sudden, instead of working to the target of getting one picture up on the wall and the rest of the pictures staying in the darkroom, the rest of the eggs in the darkroom, suddenly we've got an opportunity where Paul Kay is selling an album to everybody and Cover Girl to at least 1 in 2. Almost every time, all our pictures are going to end up being used. This is going to open our eyes and thrill us as photographers and excite us in a new way. So that's 2 ideas about portrait albums that will certainly make you feel kindly disposed to want to do it. But it doesn't, and wanting to do it is one thing, but you are left with many problems. Let's take the first one. Yes, Mike, I love the idea. It's great. But for goodness sakes, it's going to ruin my order for the wall portraits. And if it doesn't do that, it's certainly going to ruin my order for the shelf, my orders for shelf portraits. Well, remember what I said. I said this is a qualifier. The opposite is the case. The reverse is the case. The people who agree to buy this PK preview album for the price of 311.14s before they start, for them money is no object. They're self-selecting. They're even more likely to buy the wall portraits, because that's what's brought them in anyway. And take the problem of the shelf portrait, because you saw Paul doing it. Paul sells them up to the larger size, doesn't he? Your fear of that is it's going to ruin your order for shelf portraits, because they're going to pull this apart and give it to all the relatives. Now, I'm not saying you've actively thought about it. What I'm saying is that these are the fears. These are the reasons why you're not doing it, even if you hadn't thought about it. They're the historical reasons why this has died. It's not new. There's nothing new under the sun. But it's coming back. It's coming back because the answers are there. Now, what is the answer? You're concerned that these people are going to pull this apart and give it to their families? Do they do that with their wedding albums? No, of course they don't. They love it. This is an event. It's precious. And I'm sure somebody in the room can cite somebody who pulled a wedding album apart. But that's a minority. We don't cater to the minority. These are our fears. The majority do not do it. They want this album. They wouldn't let anybody pull it apart. They want it together. They want the whole event, because that's what we've provided for them. So it does not interfere with your shelf portraits, and it certainly assists the sale of the wall portraits, because it acts as a qualifier. Now let's look at the pricing. Paul Kay, pricing, okay? I told you, I'm going to discuss some formulas. I've given you the formula on this one. We're selling this at the level of 3 11x14s. You can choose your own price. You fix the qualifier at the level you want to. You saw what Paul does. They come into the studio, and that album has been pre-sold. They've paid for that when they made their booking. We ask for their credit card number, and they pay us in full, or they send a check into the studio before they come for their sitting. So that is organized. The PK preview album is organized. The sitting fee includes the production of the album, this little album. Ah, yeah. This is not a lecture, by the way. This is an interaction. And I heard you. I heard you. You were thinking. I'm glad you're thinking. And the thought that flashed through your heads just then, what happens, Mike? What happens if they don't want this album? That's what you were thinking. Fine, they don't have to have it. But it'll cost the same, won't it? You see? It's a qualifier. So they're paying in advance the sitting fee, which includes the production of that little album. That's the first step in the Paul Kay studio. Then they come into the studio and they sit down with Paul, and he shows them this entire range, and he encourages them towards the 8x10. I'm discussing now pricing, all right? This is the heading that we're under. What do we charge for this then? Well, in our studio, we're charging the equivalent of a 24x30. That's the price that we put on this. Think about that. Isn't that wonderful? We haven't taken a single picture, and we're already offering something that's worth as much as that. And 1 in 3 of our clients actually bites on it, actually buys it, because it is very desirable. before a single picture is taken. We're actually selling this as the proof album instead of that one. They don't have both. We sell them up from that to this. This now becomes the proof album. And when it comes down from the lab, we have it sent down with the pages, with the inserts not set in the pages, so that I can lay them out on the table. We use it as a proof album in that case. Take this formula down, because you'll find it very interesting, you'll find it helpful. The way we're pricing that, the way we reach that price is as follows. Take your 8 by 10 price and multiply it by 20. That being the number of pages that you're likely to put in there. Now, I'm not saying it should be 20. We say in our literature 15 to 20 pictures, but Paul will take as many as he can. He may take 25, he may take 30, in which case there could be 30 pictures in there. Doesn't matter. They're lucky. Good luck to them if they get more. We're lucky too because it's more product to sell. Because we're using this at the proof stage. Take your formula. Your 8 by 10, you multiply by 20 rather, and you divide by 2. That's the formula. Now that division by 2 is a special offer. You see, if they bought this later, it would have been the full price. What we're saying to our clients is you may have this at a special offer if you agree to do it now, before a single picture is taken. If you agree to do it now, before a single picture is taken. Yes, you're thinking, aren't you? In the real world, what does the client say when you pitch that? She says, do I have to decide now, doesn't she? That's what she says. And you'll love Paul Kay's reply. Yes, says Paul. Because it will affect the way I take the pictures. Oh! Isn't that wonderful? She's dressed up to the nines with the whole family, and here's the photographer whom she wants to please right now because she wants the best possible picture she can get. This is a special event. And he is saying that she's already paid for this, and she can use the money that she's paid for this towards the larger one. So this one goes out of the window, as it were, and we're moving on to this idea now. She's seeing this whole range, she's homing in on this, and he's saying that this is going to be great because maybe she can get a few more pictures in this. Then this will be 15 to 20 pictures, and what he's implying is that there'll be a few more pictures and they'll be even nicer sort of thing. Oh, she wants that. 1 in 3 buys it. It's wonderful. And it's the special offer element, isn't it? It's the fact that it's half price. It's the fact that we've divided by 2 that makes it so attractive as well. There's so many reasons why she's going to say yes. What does he charge for that one? And what should we charge for it? Well, my answer to you is, as much as you dare. You see, the idiot who's going to buy this doesn't mind what it costs. It's the premium product. He's buying it because it's the biggest and the best, not because of what it costs. So it really doesn't matter what it costs. You're not going to sell very many of them anyway. We've had this just over a year, as you've all had. We've sold 7 of them. Now, 3 of them, 3 to 1 client, up from this. That was wonderful. It only happened once, but it was great. The other 4 went to other people. What's really relevant about this is that it helps to sell this one. That's what happens, isn't it? And this one is important because it helps to sell this one. And this one's important because it helps to sell this one. I haven't really answered your question, though. What do we charge? The answer is that we're charging 4 times what we charge for the 8 by 10. That's what we're charging for this one. And the 11 by 14, we're charging twice what we charge for for the 8x10. And that's the gradation up in the Paul K studio. It just gives you a feel for the formula that we're working to. And that's the pricing in Paul K. Let's run over to CoverGirl for a minute. All right? Now, here we are in CoverGirl. And here we transproof. There they drive their business by that qualifier. But over here, do you remember that picture on the light box, the slide on the light box? I asked you to hold that in your minds. Here, when we transproof, the first thing that we offer is the 8x10 album. And the way to succeed for us with this is a combination of two elements: the light box and the timing of the offer. The first thing that we offer. You see, we all want to sell the wall portraits. They've become the high-ticket item. The reason why they've killed this is we go straight to it. Now, when you go straight to that, to select the picture for the wall portrait, what we're actually doing is deselecting the rest of the pictures. And it's very hard, it's almost impossible to sell an album of deselected pictures. It can be done, but it's very hard. That's why the timing is so important. It's the first thing that we do. And because it's the first thing we do before they deselect, we have a wonderful opportunity because we lay out all those pictures on the light box. That light box added 10% to our gross. We measured it. We lay all those pictures out on the light box, so they're all shouting, "Buy me." And we're still on price, remember. I'm going to show you that there is more than one way to skin a cat. Over there, they price it one way. Here, we price it quite differently. Remember the 6 looks? The 6 CoverGirl looks on the screen there? Right. Here, what we say is, you may choose the best of each look, which is 6 looks. 6 8x10s is the formula. 6 8x10s at a normal price. And you may have this beautiful album, this nice, soft album, including the pages, pictures on 2 sides, like this, free. So you'll pay the 6 8x10s, and this is with our compliments. The album and pages are with our compliments. But hold on. If you have the whole lot, all 30 pictures that are on this light box, you may have all 30 for the price of just 12. So it's 6 at normal price, including the cover, but all 30 for the price of another 6, for the price of 12. That is an irresistible offer. And more than 1 in every 2 of our clients buy either the 6 or the whole lot. And so an album is going out to 1 in every 2 clients or more. And what that tells you is that we have established a way of, both by proofs and by transproofs, leading to the same end result, which is portrait albums. Right, that is pricing. And I'm now going to come on to something which is even more important. And that is the presentation of the price. You see, before we discussed pricing, you were worried that it was going to ruin the sales of the wall and the shelf pictures. There is another problem. There is another reason why this isn't happening naturally. Especially for those of you who transproof, and at least half of you in the room transproof. And I'm sure wisely too. Properly and correctly. Now, the problem with albums when you transproof is not that it will ruin the order for the enlargements, but it will certainly damage it for the following reason. And those of you who are thinking with me, have this in your head right now. What you are thinking is, if I offer them this album, what they're going to say to me is, fine, when the album is ready, then I'll choose my enlargements. Oh. Ah. Now, there's a problem, isn't it? No, it isn't a problem either. It's the reason why it's not happening naturally, but it has an answer. We don't transproof in Paul K, but if we did, and we were handling this album in that way, and you might like to take this down, what we would say is the following. You may have the album at this special half price. You remember, I've divided it by 2. You may have the album at this special half price, provided you agree to do it now, and on the basis that the album will be printed with the rest of your order. That's how we can do it so cheaply. I've cracked it, haven't I? You see? Because now, if she comes in and sees her pictures up on the screen and says that she wants to have the album first, with pleasure she may have it, but it will cost the full price, the normal price for the 8x10s and not the half price. Oh, well then I'll order now with, and the album, I'll see the album with the rest of the pictures. And if she doesn't, she'll be very happy because you'll be getting the value of two 24x30s. That's if you worry about that. In our studio, to be absolutely honest with you, we don't worry about that. We're quite comfortable if somebody does end up just having a 10/8 album. And may I say to you, it's extremely rare. Because for the person who orders this, for them money is absolutely no object. They're sorting themselves out, they're self-selecting in that manner. And so they're even more likely to buy large ones, and in fact they're even more likely to buy even more enlargements. So it really doesn't worry us, the odd one that does have just the album. But I've given you the answer if it is a concern. Over here, in CoverGirl, we do have the problem, don't we? We have the very real problem, because we do transproof. And we handle it here quite differently again. As I keep saying, there is more than one way to do things. And you may have another 100 ways of doing it. In CoverGirl, the way we do it is as follows. We take our prices and we add 25% to what we want to charge. Now, there's nothing improper in this, and you'll hear, when you hear the whole story, you'll hear why. We add 25% to what we want to charge, and that is what appears on our price list. And on the bottom of the price, this applies to all the prices, and on the bottom what we say is, provided you order on the day of your sitting, you may have a 25% discount. And we mean it when we say that if they don't order that day, they must pay the full price, and we impose it. That's why I say to you, it is perfectly proper, and some people have to pay it if they choose to do that. But the vast majority, when they say, may I have the album now and I'll choose later, the answer to them is, of course you may. But I must point out to you that you will have to pay the full price. You won't get the 25% discount. Oh, she says. In that case, obviously, I don't want to lose that. I must order now. And we've cracked it again, haven't we? And this is in the real world. This is how we're doing it. And most of our clients, those who want more than just the album, order the rest at the same time. Very few order later because of that. So that gives you the pricing, the presentation of the price. And it leaves us with the use of the album. I've been teasing you with this. For the past quarter of an hour, I've been holding this up, this PK Preview album. I've been telling you that it's new, but I haven't described to you what it is. So let's just look at what it is and how we use it. It's a hard back. It's not cozy like those. It's intentionally not quite as nice. But it is properly covered, and you can't see the binding. It's like a book. But inside, you and I recognize a spiral. The client doesn't appreciate the importance of that, but we know that it means it'll come apart very easily. It will hold. I'm describing the specifications, our specifications. These are photographer's specifications, and they're important. It will hold a low line of 10 pages and a high line of 30 pages in the same binder. Now, that's extremely versatile. It means that we can give as few or as many pictures as we want to in our proofs. It's an excellent proof album. The next feature is that the pictures are only on one side of the page, so that we can lay them out on the table, and there won't be pictures lost underneath. That's a big problem when choosing pictures. The size that we use is 6.5 inches by 4.5 inches. That is purposely a nonsense size. You can't put it in a frame. It's useless. But we're able to do that because we do our own processing in our own laboratory. Many of you will be sending your work out, and the laboratories will be sending you proofs that are either 5x4 or 5x4 or 4x3. And Mark Roberts and I have tested these very carefully, and they look excellent inside the same gold line. You don't have to change the gold line at all. This is not an insert. This is something onto which we stick the pictures. We use 3M tape, double-sided tape, 3 inches and 2 inches, and you lay it down the back, you peel off the paper, and you stick it down. This is because it's a very inexpensive page. It wouldn't be worth the time to reclaim it anyway. Besides which, we've pre-sold it. We don't have to reclaim too many of them. There are vertical pages and there are horizontal pages. We use 1/3 horizontal to 2/3 vertical. And we carry stocks of them. At the back of the book, you'll notice there's a little pouch. Down there, we keep the client's price list, or our promotion on our restoration work, or the credit card ticket, or whatever. All the bits and pieces will fit in there very nicely. And the way we use this is so good. You saw it on the screen. You saw the client comes in, I show them their pictures very quickly, and then, you've ruined my album. It's as quick as that. I pull it apart, and I go, And no, I haven't ruined her album, have I? I've just made it impossible for her to go until I put it together again. I make light of it, but this is the specification. She is designed by us for us, and it really puts us in control. It's wonderful. Bear in mind, there's no way that she would have had any idea that it could come apart. She's shocked when I do that, every time. So I'm now able to sort out the pictures into the sequence in which they were taken, and I'm able to say, which one do you prefer, this one or this one? And when that is finished and we're organized with our sale, the thing goes back together, not quite as quickly. I turn it upside down, by the way. There's the front. I go upside down, and I feed them in from the back. I'm showing you this as carefully as this because the art leather reps here tonight are seeing this for the first time tonight as well. So they won't be able to show you, so have a look. That's how it goes back together again. And although, when the clients watch me do this, they're quite fascinated, and they still can't do it. But you're professionals. And I'm sure you won't find it too difficult. It doesn't take too long to get the hang of slipping those, the spiral back together. You don't need a gadget. You don't need a machine. You can have one. You may feel it's clever. It makes you look even more professional. It makes it even harder for the client to do it. That's fine. But you don't actually need it. And the final piece in the specification is that it's only gripped at the front of the cover, not at the back as well. And that means that we're able to pull it apart as easily as you saw me do it, and of course it goes back together as quickly as well. I'm not going to do the whole lot for you, but there you are. Now, who would have imagined that I could entertain 250 adults disassembling and reassembling an album, but I've done it. Thank you. And it's a very useful item indeed. Over in the CoverGirl studio, we're using this item, the presentation album, because we're not selling proofs, we're selling a finished product. And here, just let me repeat, it's the timing and it's the light box that moves this. And whether you're using the album as a qualifier or using it as the final product, both ways lead to the same end result, which is albums. And that brings me to the final point, which is the sample range. I said to you that you need to know about the sample range as well. Now, what I've shared with you in the past half hour is a marketing strategy which took us 7 years to put together. You see, when we started 20 years ago, we had an earlier version of this album. And like you, like all photographers, Paul Kay was constantly improving the experience of returning to his studio. And the way he was doing this, like you, was by improving the quality of his work. Because that's what we know to do. But you know what happens? I wonder if you do know. We reach a certain level, a rarefied level, and it happens quite early in our careers, where, to be absolutely honest, although our peer group can recognize the improvement in our work, our clients find it increasingly difficult. And so if we're actually going to provide a genuine new experience every time they come, it's got to be something more physical than just improved work. We've got to improve our work as well. But what I got across to Paul quite early on was we need something physical. And so we introduced the 8x10. And not a lot happened. A whole year went by. And so I said to Paul, you know what we need to do? We need to introduce the 11x14. And that's what we did. And it took a whole year to sell one 11 by 14. A whole year. But you know what did happen during that year? We started to sell these like hotcakes. It was wonderful. It's obvious, isn't it? So, what did I think? But it didn't exist, did it? So I had to start putting the pressure on Mark Roberts and Art Leather, and eventually, after 3 years, it took 3 years, and then they had to overcome the practical manufacturing problems, and finally, last year, this arrived. And as I've told you, we sold 7 of them in a year, but that isn't the point. As soon as this arrived, these started to move wonderfully. And so now, what am I thinking? And the thinking is right. But you see, it took 7 years to get there, and I'm sharing it with you in an evening, and you have the opportunity now, if you like what you've heard, to test it. That's all you can do, is test it. But if you do want to test it, you can't sort of, well, you can, but in my view, to give it a real test, one needs to carry the entire range. We took 7 years to do it, but now we carry the entire range in all our camera rooms. We have 4 sales rooms at CoverGirl, we have a sales room at Paul Kay. All 5 sales rooms have got a 2016, 11 by 14, the 8 by 10s, and of course in Paul Kay, the PK preview album. And one needs to test them all. We carry stocks because we know we're going to sell them. We need stocks of the PK preview album, and we need stocks of these, vast stocks, and we have them, because we know that we're going to sell them. Those are the 2 lines of sale. The others are the add-on sales. Order the sample range, yes, and then when you get home tonight, go to the last sitting that you took, whatever it was, and take those negatives off the shelf and put them in this 8 by 10 album. And go to the previous sitting and put them in this one, and the one before that, whatever it was, and put it in there, and the one before that, whatever it was, and you put it in there. If they weren't good enough, why did you take them? Isn't that a fair question? And my own answer to it is, they are good enough because we're not looking for your best work, we're looking for your ordinary, everyday, average work. That's what needs to be in there, because that's what we're suggesting to our clients. And please, don't put all different sittings in one album because we've only got one sample album. That's a photographer's sample. It is not a client sample. It's not what we're encouraging her to buy. She can't identify with that. We want her to see a complete sitting so that she can desire it for herself. A complete sitting in there, a complete sitting in there, and a complete sitting in there. And that is the portrait album story. Before we go into the break, I promised you I was going to talk about the photographer's bulletin. And it looks like this. I want to tell you about the bulletin. And when I share this with you, I think you will find it extremely interesting. The photographer's bulletin is written in 2 editions every month. It has been going for 5 years, and Paul Kay and I write it. Paul writes 15 pages every month on portrait photography. He is a fellow of the British Institute of Professional Photography, and he is a fellow of the Royal Photographic Society, and he is the chairman of the panel that makes new fellows at the Royal. He's at the very top of his career in portraiture in England. And he writes each month, among other things, about the applications for awards, and he marks them. And he shows the pictures, and he describes how they could be done better. It is a wonderful learning document. And you'll get the feel for where you stand in relation to these people, and you'll also learn a lot about how to take better portrait photographs, and it will interest you about how things are done in another country. It will broaden your horizon photographically. It comes by airmail every month from England. That's also lovely. It's like an ongoing seminar. If you're enjoying the buzz that we're enjoying here tonight, you'll have that once a month at your desk. It's like an ongoing seminar at your desk. Paul also includes 2 color pages every month, which are a complete sitting in our studio. This month he might show you how he's photographed a baby. Next month it might be graduation pictures. The following month it might be a family group, an engaged couple. By the end of a year, you've got 12 different sittings, whole sittings. Where do you see that? It's very hard to find. He is providing whole sittings. They're inspirational. You get to know how the man's mind is working, how it's done in England, and so on. And that is just his edition. Now, my edition comes in the same envelope every month, and I write another 15 pages. It's all editorial. There is no advertising in this thing. The way it works is that if you will kindly fill in your name and your address and your telephone number on that form, you will receive the bulletin for the next 3 months, and then if you like it, it will cost you $235, and that is a lot of money. And the reason why you will like it is that during those 3 months, you will derive more than $235 worth of value. And if you don't, you will cancel it. And you will not offend me if you cancel it. And let me tell you that for every 3 of you that fill in this form, 1 of you will cancel. And that will not upset me in the slightest, because you've given us the chance to impress you. The other 2 will find that they've had more than $235 worth of value. And I know that you will. Many of you will, and so you will let it run. I must ask you, please, to fill in the bottom section as well with a credit card section, because that's the only way we can activate it. We have no credit control system, but we will not touch that until after you've had 3 editions, and it will be more than our relationship with art leather is worth to abuse it. So you don't have to worry on that score at all. You will not be charged until after you've had 3 editions, and if you wanted to cancel or fall back to 1 edition, you could do that. But take both editions, tick the box, check the box that says both editions, because both editions are free. So you might as well have them. Take advantage of us for those 3 months. We would like you to do that. It's our wish that you have these sales tips with our compliments over those 3 months, and it'll give you an opportunity to assess this thing. And I must thank you for being a wonderful audience during the first half, and I look forward very much to sharing the sales tips with you in the second half. Fun time. For my video audience, I really appreciate this opportunity to thank you very much for buying this video, and I would like to extend to you the same invitation to subscribe to the Photographer's Bulletin. You may have both editions absolutely free for the next 3 months by simply writing to us. Even if you don't have an application form handy, write to the Photographer's Bulletin, 74 New Bond Street, London, W1 9DD, England, and send us your credit card number together with the expiry date and the name on the card, and explain to us that you would like both editions. Take both editions because both editions are free for the first 3 months, and you will not be charged until the end of a full 3 months, just like everybody else. And if you find that you do not like it after the 3 months, you will write to me, and you will simply cancel it, and we will not debit your card. So you have nothing to worry about, but if you're enjoying this video, you will love the bulletins. They're like an ongoing seminar at your desk. It is an opportunity. You have nothing to lose and a great deal to gain. And remember what I was saying to the crowd as well. $235 may be a lot of money, but you will derive a great deal more value than that out of those bulletins, and if I'm wrong, you will simply cancel it. And you will not offend me. Thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the second half even more than you enjoyed the first half of this video. So off we go. Encourage your staff, my bags are packed. This is a great idea. It was given to me by another lecturer, and he was a ball game coach. Now, the relevance for us in photography is in the way we handle our staff, the way we deal with our staff. We're all guilty of it. I'm as bad as anybody else. I have a new member of staff, a trainee, and I ask him to do something for me, and he brings it back, and I say, oh, not like that. I wanted you to do it like this. Please go away and have another go. And he comes back, oh, you've still got it wrong. And he goes away, and he comes back. By the time he's done this 3 or 4 times, he's pulling his hair out with frustration. Now, what this man taught me was something that his father gave to him. Now, his father was an old man who hadn't achieved very much in his life at all, but he gave his son the most valuable gift anybody can give anybody, and that is his confidence in him, his belief in his ability to win through. And I do this now for my children, and I do it for our staff. In this particular case, what was happening was the ball game coach wanted to win the finals of the ball game. He couldn't get his college through, and his father said, I know you can do it, I know you can win, and my bags are packed to see you get to the finals. It took 10 years, apparently, And they got to the finals, and eventually the old man actually packed his bags and went and watched his finals. It took 10 years, apparently, and they got to the finals, and eventually the old man actually packed his bags and went and watched his finals. And very sadly, he died soon after that. And the punchline of this story is that the ball game coach knows. He says, I know that wherever my father is today, his bags are packed to see me win. And I find that a very, very moving way of describing the way I now like to interact with our staff. Remove your smallest size. Now, does anybody know who first said that? Or who first said it loudly? It was Paul Linwood Gittings who first said that loudly. He wrote it in a book which I read when I joined Paul 20 years ago, and I think the book was written just after the war. And the first thing we did in our studio was to cut out the 4x5s that Paul was selling, and the 15x12 big ones. We didn't have the word wall portraits, but his smallest portrait on the wall was a 15x12, and we cut it out. So for a while we were running with 20x16s and 7x5s. You know the story today. Now we're running with 10x8 or smaller and 20x24 or smaller. But it isn't just words. This is the view from that couch. Over here off the slide, there is a 2430 vertical. Here is a 2430 horizontal. Here is a 3040 horizontal. Here is a 3040 gold oval vertical. Here is a 40x50. Here is another 30x40, and here, by the toilet, is the 20x24. And you see, it's merchandising as well. We're suggesting the sizes by the way in which we position them to our clients. Those pictures aren't there by accident. That's been very carefully laid out. And it's a working story, a living story that I'm describing. Is extend your product range. Again, we talked in the first half, didn't we, about the product range being three-pronged. We said it was shelf portraits, we said it was wall portraits, and we said it was album portraits. But it's wider than that. It only starts there, it goes on, because I'm sure many of you like us are photographing, for example, politicians. Now, when a politician comes into our studio, we offer him button badges, bumper stickers, postcards, posters, whole election campaigns. And we've taken orders occasionally not for $20,000, but $100,000 or even $200,000 because we've broadened the product. We've extended the product. This is how we maximize that finite time, that camera time, which is our short lifetime. We only have a finite amount of time. We owe it to ourselves as well as to our clients to maximize the value of our camera time. And the way we do that is by extending the product range. And not just extending it by broadening it, but extending it by heightening it. Include a premium, high-priced item as well. Let me ask you a question. If I came into your studio tomorrow morning, could I buy a single item for, say, $7,500, a single item? Do you have it? And if you haven't, then you need to think about that, because one day this year, somebody like me will come in and will be very interested to do it if it were available. Here am I next to our high-priced items. Now, there's the 2016 album. There's the 40x50 in a premium frame. It's not the person who buys the biggest thing you've got. It's the fact that it makes all the things underneath it look more attainable, look less expensive. That's why we do it. It would look lovely in an oval. Do you remember this picture? We were discussing it in the first half, the picture of Mum. And we said that a whole multi-million-dollar industry has grown out of that problem. But you know something? I didn't really answer the question. I answered it in a macro style for the whole marketplace, but I didn't answer the problem in the classical studio where many of us still are, we are, in Paul K. There is Mum's picture still on the table. The rest of the order has been placed. And at the very end, if I find that's the position, I have worked out one way of handling this, which I do try. What I do, I take Mum's picture, and I say, Joan, this picture of you, it's so lovely. Do you know something? It would look lovely in an oval. It's so feminine. I don't know why I get away with that. Is it because it's egg-shaped? All I know is that I get a very, very positive response to the observation. He says, he starts nodding. Yes, he agrees. And she very often just caves in on that. And it's all she needs, that bit of encouragement. And you know, so many times at the end of a sale, I can take an extra order for another wall portrait just by saying it would look lovely in an oval. So I thought I would share it with you, and by all means, give it a try. Never let them know what you're thinking. This is back to the training, to the dealing with our staff. And this is not just what we tell our staff, what they should do. We have difficulty with it ourselves. I do. It sounds simple. Basically, what we're saying here is that we should never speak about clients in front of other clients. It's so easily done, even though we know we shouldn't do it. Let me illustrate it for you. You may be in a client's home, you may be handling a wedding, and you've taken your assistant with you. Or you may have gone into their home to take an order for portraits. And again, you want your assistant to learn what happens. So we're taking this order, and Joan loves her pictures, and she places a wonderful order. It's very exciting. Or they're very rude to you, and they insult your work, and you're horrified, and they're wrong. Or they order a picture, and it's the wrong one, and they've been incredibly stupid. I don't mind what happens in that home. At the end of that meeting, whatever happened, you leave the house with your assistant and with your samples. You make sure that Jim and Joan have shut the door firmly with them the other side of it. You walk to the car and you discuss the weather, you discuss the latest ball game or whatever. You do not discuss that meeting. You put the samples in the trunk, you get into the car, you start the engine, you drive away, and then you whoop for joy at the wonderful order you've taken. You pull your hair out at the insults you've just received. You roar with laughter at the ridiculous picture she chose. But you do not do it in front of the client, and you do not do it as you walk to the car, because let's imagine for a minute that you did that. You saw them shut the door with them the other side of it, you're walking to the car, you put the pictures in the trunk, and suddenly there's Jim offering to help you put the pictures in the trunk. They come out of the cracks in the pavement. You cannot take too much care with this. It applies just as much in the reception area, and we're as guilty of making the mistake as our clients, and it loses, as our trainees, and it loses sales. The pen is mightier than the camera. But surely we all know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So what am I saying? Well, I'll tell you what I'm saying. You see, a picture is worth 1,000 words is words, and they're very clever words at that. Conjunctions are joining words. This is a little detail which you'd never get wrong on a page if it were a photograph, so let's get it right in the words as well. And but go in the middle of sentences, not at the beginning. Full stops go at the end of sentences, not commas and then carrying on and on and on, because what we want is short sentences. And avoid very. It's very, very, very important. But I haven't added to the emphasis at all by saying that. I got the point across just as well. And when I write letters, I go through and I actually delete the various. It's more professional. All we're talking about is ways in which we can raise the image of our professionalism. Get, that catch-all word, get. Let's use proper words. Isn't, inside inverted commas, all of these words are fine. Of course they are, colloquially. But in a professional letter to a client, this is what we're talking about. These short letters to clients, we're trying to raise the level of our professionalism and the way we appear. Avoid repetition. Well, I don't need to say any more about that one. And one idea per sentence. Keep it simple. The next subject in a new paragraph, and just 3 or 4 paragraphs maximum in any of these business letters to our clients. And you appeal. You will be pleased to know that your pictures are ready. When you came to the studio, you took such care with the way that you dressed the children that I am thrilled with the results. Your appointment to return to the studio to view your pictures is on such and such a date, and I look forward to seeing you. Yours sincerely, Michael Friedman. How much nicer that is than I this, I that, I the other. Which person do you prefer to deal with? Brevity takes a little longer, and it's worth taking the time. When you've written a letter, when I write a letter, I actually take the time to make it shorter, because brevity takes a little longer. You have an even better time to ask for leads. You can ask for leads during the sitting. You've got to speak to them about something. Why not discuss her best friend? You'll get such wonderful expressions, won't you? It's obvious. Hairdressers do it without even thinking. There's no ulterior motive to it. It's the most natural thing to do. Discuss her next-door neighbor. Discuss her sister-in-law. You might not get such good expressions then. But the point is right, isn't it? It's the most normal thing in the world to do, because you're going to make conversation in some way. Let's talk about things that are of interest to her as well. And we'll give you very animated expressions. Then, at the end of the sitting, and you saw Paul Kay doing this, you sit down with Joan, and you say, Joan, you mentioned your sister-in-law Mary, and you said she's very interested to have some pictures done of the children. I'd love to give her a ring. And you sit there with your pen poised on that piece of paper. You say, I'd love to give her a ring. What is her number? And phone to make bookings. Never phone after the close. I love this one. You see, what happens here is we reopen the order, don't we? If we phone after the close. Why should we do it? Let's look at a situation. Jim and Joan have come into the studio, and there's a picture of the children together on the floor, and there's a picture of the children sitting half-length. And they've ordered all the rest of the stuff, and they're humming and hawing over these two pictures, and eventually they sort it out, and they're very happy, and they go home. And then you gather the order together, and you look at it, and for the life of you, you can't remember, was it the full-length one, or was it the half-length one? Guess! How wrong can you be? You've got a 50-50 chance of being right anyway. And look at the alternative. What are you going to do? Are you actually going to pick up this phone? This is the bit I hate. This phone is like a hot potato for me. I can't do this. But you want me to, so I'm going to phone her. Hello, Joan. Oh, I hate this. Hello, Joan, it's Mike here. You won't believe this, but I've forgotten which picture you actually chose. Was it the one on the floor, or was it the one sitting half-length? Because, you know, we were discussing it so long. It was crazy, but I can't remember which one. Oh, says Joan, do you know something? It was Jim that was worried. I don't know which one he wanted either. I'll tell you what I'll do, she says. I'll give Jim a ring and I'll phone you back. Oh, no, hold on a minute, I can't do that. Jim's already left for Cyprus. I'm joining him there tonight. When we get back in a week's time, I'll phone you and I'll tell you which one it is. Oh, hold on. No, because from Cyprus, we're going on to Paris and we're going to be there for 4 weeks. Don't do anything for now. And we'll let you know. Oh, my two least favorite sentences in the English language. Guess. The principle of minimum or alternative choice. Now, this is the either-or one. And it's interesting to discuss why it's so valuable. You see, we're all of us, and I count myself in this, we're all of us a little bird-brained. Now, what do I mean by that? Collectors of birds' eggs will know if there are more than 2 eggs in a nest, you can remove one, and the hen bird will still hatch the remaining eggs. But if there are only 2 eggs in the nest and you remove one, the hen bird will not hatch that remaining egg because she can count to 2. And we're the same. We're the same. Let me show you. Look at this slide here. There is a pile of matches. Now, look at that. And instantly you all know how many matches there are there. Let's apply it now. Let's take a very simple thing like making a booking in our studios. Sounds easy enough. But listen, would you like to do it this week or next week? Would you like to come in on Monday or Tuesday? I can do it in the morning or the afternoon. Shall we do it at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock? And would you rather come to the studio or shall I come to your home? Now you get the answer to those questions and you've made a booking. And this principle of either or, which actually helps us to forget the third one, which is neither, this principle of minimum choice applies across the board to all the decisions that we want to help our clients make. Credit cards make more bookings and make more sales. Do not begrudge the commissions that we pay on credit cards. You see, they're so valuable, these cards. They're such a wonderfully flexible instrument. And it's particularly the large orders that this relates to. When somebody places an order for a large amount of money, they very often don't have enough cash in their pockets, and they very often don't have their checkbook with them. But invariably, they do have their credit cards with them. Now, this means that they're able to pay in full on the day, and they don't have to come back another day to pay. And when people have to come back another day, there is a very high statistical likelihood that they will reduce the order. And for that reason alone, credit cards more than justify the commissions that we pay on them. But there are more reasons than that, and they make bookings as well, don't they? You're ahead of me in this one. We all know that when we phone the cinemas and the theatres, they ask for our credit card numbers to confirm the bookings. Photographers, we can do the same thing. In England, we're starting to. I'm sure you're way ahead of me, but it's very valuable. It makes the use of our time far more efficient. It ensures that the bookings on our diaries are definite, they're confirmed with money. And we're not silly about it. If somebody needs to change the day, of course they may change it. But it certainly increases the incidence of bookings and the quality of them. So I love credit cards. Extended credit increases sales and bookings as well. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, it's obvious that extended credit increases sales. But bookings, this is something new. Promotions, portrait promotions. There are basically 2 types of promotion in the world. One is win, and the other is free. There's free and there's win, and there's virtually no filter, no qualifier involved in these promotions. And so we struggle with low average orders, and we scratch our heads and say, how can we promote and get a higher average order? And here is the answer. Through extended credit, you can now stand under this picture in the shopping mall, and when Jim or Joan come by and they ask you, how much is this picture, you can say, $5 a week, or the price of a bottle of wine. Now that is interesting. You see, what we're doing is we're taking this high-ticket item out of that area of our discretionary spending power, which we have together, where we consult each other as man and wife, and you're moving it into that area of our discretionary spending power where we exercise it on our own. A bottle of wine is something we buy on our own. Jim, Joan will go out and buy a bottle of wine. Joan can walk by, see that, $5. I can afford that, I want that, I'm going to do that. She'll pay her $5. They'll come into the studio for that. Not for something free, not for something they've won, for that. And do you know something else? They'll very often not use the extended credit either. Because once they get in there and they're committed to this idea, what a wonderful qualifier, what a wonderful filter that is. But it's still a promotion. And it's a very, very new and valuable idea. And hold on to success. This is an important one. Every time we take an order in our studio, I say the same thing to our clients. Jim, Joe, and I say, the first thing that we do is print. With your permission, because I know you want these pictures quickly, I'm going to fax this order up to the laboratory, and although I'm quoting 2 weeks, the first thing we do is print. Then we spot, we retouch, we mount on the canvas, we stretch on the stretcher, we put in the beautiful frame. We then box it for you, and then it's freighted back. That's where the time goes, but the first thing we do is we print. And by now, she's frowning. Why are you saying this to me? Because I want you to know that once we put this order through, it is definite. Oh, she says, of course. Because they're high on their decision. They're very happy with their decision, and it's a very important discussion. Because we know what happens, don't we? They get in the car, and they drive home. And he says, that was a lot of money. And she says, well, I had no idea you were going to buy the big one as well. And he says, what do you mean it was your idea? Yes, but Jim, the big one as well? I'll tell you what he says. You give him a ring in the morning and tell him we'll have the little ones for now and we'll have the big one later. You've all heard it, haven't you? And sure enough, the next day, the phone rings and there's Joan on the phone. Hello, Mike, she says. I'm not sure about the size of the large one on the wall. That's what she says, isn't it? She's not sure about the size. We've all heard it. Do you mind if we have the little ones now and we'll let you know about the big one? Well, Joan, I say, I know that if I phone my laboratory, they will tell me that they've already printed the picture. So whatever I say to you at this stage, I'm going to be stuck with it. I told Jim you'd say that, she says. Thank you very much, and she puts the phone down. More than half the time, that works, because you really can, hold on to success. And when this starts to happen in your studio, hold this slide in your memory and handle it the way I've just described, and you'll find that you can, more than half the time, you can hold on to success. The bank that likes to say yes is the Trustee Savings Bank. And I have a very good friend called Philip Birmingham. Philip Birmingham has a studio in Washington. Some of you may know him. And when he heard this idea, he said to me, you know, when I speak to my clients, I actually nod like this. He says, it's very hard to say no to somebody when they're nodding like this. And he's right. My event was with an Arabic client. She is married to a sheikh, and if you're married to a sheikh, you are a shaker. Now, this lady has come to us, I think, for 7 years running. And she made a new appointment, and the following day, before the pictures were taken, the driver was on the phone. Mike, Shaker would like her negatives. Please tell the Shaker, I said, that she's been coming to us for 7 years, and we have all her negatives since she ever started. And she's right to have left them with us, because whenever she wants to order more copies, we have the negatives. And they're safe. They're in our fireproof safe, in our safekeeping. And he phoned the next day. Shaker wants her negatives. So I tried again. Please tell Shaker that we have many Arabic clients, and she knows most of them, and ask her please to understand the problem she's giving to us, and if we may please keep her negatives as usual. You will notice I have not used the word no anywhere in those constructions, because it doesn't exist in my vocabulary. The next day, he gave me a coded message, and he said, Shaker wants her negatives, and I am instructed to say to you that if she may not have them, I am to cancel the appointment. Right. Now, at that point, of course, I could say no. Obviously, I could. But it's not in my vocabulary. What I prefer to do is to take whatever this impetus is and move it over my shoulder where I can live with it. I call this linguistic judo. Now, what can I do with this? You have to think on your feet very fast. You see, it's only a question of money. It's not principle. Whenever they say it's the principle, it's the money. So think about it. Here's how I handled it. I said to the man, please tell Shaker she may have her negatives on the basis, because she didn't want to order anything, she just wanted the negatives, on the basis that she will pay for a 10 by 8 Pictutre album, which is the equivalent of a 24 by 30. Now, she may well have said no to that. That was fine. But if she said yes, I wouldn't mind either, because if all our clients said yes to that, I could close our laboratory, and we could carry on that for 2 years, and we could retire, couldn't we? It's great. And the next day, the man phoned to me, and he said, Shaker says yes. So I took our lady photographer, a lady called Susie, and we went to this Shaker's home, a very palatial home in the south of London, and Susie started taking the pictures of this Shaker. And it wasn't just the Shaker. It was the Shaker as well. 2 24 by 30s I'd sold, not one. And it was each of the 3 children as well. 5 24 by 30s. And they haggled with me. And they got me down to the price of 3 24 by 30s. And then we had another panic, because Susie came out to me. I was in the anteroom, and Susie came out to me and she said, do you know what this woman is doing? As I take the film out of the camera, she's taking it from me and running upstairs with it. I hadn't sold the negatives. I had sold 3 exposed rolls of film. And she paid in full, in cash. It was so much money, I couldn't get it in my pocket. But if you prefer, you can say no. It's up to you. And don't ask if they like the pictures. Tell them. We're photographers, and I understand why we seek validation. It's the way we improve. But our clients need validation even more than we do. If you give her the album and then say to her, do you like the pictures? She'll say yes. But, won't she? It's not your fault. That's the next bit that comes out, isn't it? It's not your fault. I don't know why I wore that dress. I couldn't do a thing with my hair that day. And you'll get all of these things. Tell them. Tell her how thrilled you are with the way she dressed the children. Tell her how much you enjoyed taking the pictures. And tell her how excited you are yourself with the results. These pictures look different already, don't they? It's a marvelous thing. After the client has left the studio and I've taken this big order, I'll gather it all up together and I'll walk through into Paul Kay's room and I'll put it on his desk together with the order form, and he'll look at it. Oh, well done, he says. It's nice. And I say, no, 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 no. Well done. You see, we're a team. And we're high with it. We're excited about what's just happened. And then our adrenaline eventually settles, and we get used to this order, and we look at what's involved and so on. And at some point in this conversation, Paul will say to me, did they like them? I don't know. I didn't ask them. They must have liked them, mustn't they? Look how much money they spent. And we have this conversation every time. And I still love him. And don't tell them which picture is best either. You see, it's another photographer syndrome. It's not a question of working to create award-winning pictures. That's for our peer group. That's what we do for our peer group. The PPA encourages us to go for our qualifications and our awards. That's absolutely right and proper. But for our clients, it's a different objective. You work to that objective of creating that best picture, and, well, you know what Joan says. She'll look at this set, there'll be one great picture, by definition the rest aren't as good, and what does she say? She says, gee, there's only one good one in here, how can I choose? You'd be better off taking that great picture out, then she can choose. You see, it's the wrong syndrome. Look at it. This isn't the point. It isn't what we think is the best picture that matters. It's what she thinks, what they think. As I turn the pages at the beginning of the sale, I know, because it's the way her pupils dilate. It's the speed with which she lets me turn the pages. It's what she says to Jim. It's their body language. Everything I know within seconds which are the best pictures, even if it takes them another hour to tell me. I know. And if she asks me which I think are the best ones, I feed back to her own best pictures, because she's got to live with them. It's not what I think that matters, it's what she thinks. We work to the objective that we could drop a pin on any picture and it would hang on the wall beautifully. If it isn't good enough, why take it? The eyes have it. Now, I mean, here it is. This is a picture by Paul, and he loves it. He took this 16 years ago in South Africa. We used to go there regularly, 4 times a year. And whenever I ask Paul for an example of his work that he's really happy with, that he's really proud of, he wheels this one out. He loves it. But it's a photographer's picture. It's beautiful. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying to you, she never bought it. You see, the pictures that our clients like are the pictures that have eye appeal, the pictures that make us go, ah. Look, they go, ah. Don't they? This little child with her little teddy bear is saying, aren't I sweet? And when we look at the person we love and say, I love you, we look them in the eye, like that. Mummy, please buy me. And so Mummy says yes. The eyes have it. And you're not selling until they're reducing their orders. If this is not happening in your studio, you are not probing the limits of their spending power. And we need to. We owe it to ourselves as well as to our clients. We only have a finite amount of time, of camera time, and we owe it to ourselves. We also owe it to our clients, by the way. They're only coming to us once or twice, very often. Very often it's a special event. Even if they're coming every year, it's still a special event, and we owe it to them to maximize the product. And this is the only indicator you have that they are maximizing their product. So when this starts to happen in your studio, rejoice! It's wonderful. It's the right thing. And I've already described earlier how when it does start to happen, you can hold on to success. And double book your diary at peak times. Double book your diary? I can't do that, Mike. Not in my town. Fine. Well, then, presumably, you're quite happy to pour those profits down that hole, but think about it. This isn't just something which applies to the big studio. We applied the principle at Paul Kay first, the idea. That's where we developed all our ideas that we're using. You may be a photographer and his or her spouse working together, 2-person team. If you're going to do portraiture, you can only handle on a Saturday, it may be your peak day, you can only handle 8 bookings. Right? You go home on a Saturday night, every Saturday night, what's happened? 6 sittings, and the other 2 have phoned and said, do you mind if I come next week instead? Do you mind? It's as awful as that, as limited as that in its excuse. The other 6 people spend $500 each. So these 2 people are costing you $1,000 every Saturday. That's what's happening. And there are 50 Saturdays in the year, so that is $50,000 that your clients are stealing from you. That's what's happening. But it doesn't have to. Take the Saturday. What you can do, if you like, instead of booking 8, you can book 10 or 11, because you know that it's 2 or 3 that cancel on a Saturday. Then when you go home on a Saturday night, you will have photographed your 8 people, and at the end of a year, you will have recovered or created $50,000 of profit. It's great. And do not cancel a double booking. Now, you may make a double booking by mistake. 9 times out of 10, it will sort itself out. So leave it. Let them apologize to you. It's so much better. Okay, you'd rather cancel it and set it out. How do you know which one has got the measles? Leave it. You can always correct it at the 11th hour if necessary. And as I say, 9 times out of 10, it will sort itself out. And consume your own product. Look here. Here's the picture of me. This hangs in our studio, in the gallery area near where I sit. This particular one we've done for this lecture. And as you can see, maybe some of the back can't see it, but this is not a real frame, it's on paper. We think this is a much more professional way of presenting work in this situation. I can carry them in a thin box all around the world. It's much nicer than sticking them up with sticky tape on the wall. And pictures are framed anyway. And so we think this looks very good. The way we do it is we enlarge the portrait on canvas in the normal way. We mount it on polyboard. Then we photograph the frame. And then in our own laboratory, we simply enlarge the frame up to that size and stick it on. And it looks very good. It's for us only. We're not selling it to clients, but if anybody can tell me how to, I'd love to know. In its proper form, with a proper frame, it hangs in our studio, and every client who comes in looks at it, and because I'm sitting near it, they have to remark upon it. And I say, yes, it is nice. It's a picture of my son. But it doesn't, the words don't matter, do they? It's what goes unsaid, it's the implication. This is a perfectly normal thing to do. What you're about to do in ordering a picture of yourself is something I do as well. There's nothing odd about what you're about to do. It's a very important message. And we have a very similar picture of Paul Kay, and he also likes his. In fact, he has it every day for lunch. Look. And this hangs in my home. That's my daughter, Natalie, and my son here, Jonathan. And it's a 30 by 40 in a swept frame. You call that the Baroque frame. And that picture, no client sees that. I've made that slide specially for you. But although no client ever sees it, that picture sells more wall portraits in that size than anything that hangs in our gallery. And let me explain why. We get to the point where we have the picture of the 2 children together. And what I do is I pick it up and I run over to the equivalent picture in the studio and I say, Jim, Joan, this picture of the children, if I were doing this for me, I would hang it in this size and in this frame. And you know something? I have exactly that in my own home of my own 2 children. And I love it. And charge more. I was watching a Kojak rerun in London recently, and he was interviewing a hot dog salesman about a murder. And he was asking questions, and somebody came up and said, how much is a hot dog? And so he said, it's $2. And then Kojak asked a few more questions about the murder, and somebody else came up and said, how much is a hot dog? And he said, it's $2.50. And Kojak asked a few more questions about the murder, and somebody else came up and said, how much is a hot dog? And he said, it's $2.90. And when Kojak had finished asking about the murder, he said to the salesman, he said, by the way, he said, how much is a hot dog on this stand? And the salesman said, I don't know. I'm still finding out. You see, it's for us to test the market, isn't it? It's not for us to decide what is the right price. It's not even for individual clients to tell us either that we're expensive. It's for us to test and test and test. And it brings me to pricing policy. Very quickly, our pricing is a product of the market level we wish to penetrate. That's all it is. So, if you wish to attack the bottom end of the market, then you will charge low prices. And you will have high volume, you will work all the hours that are given to you. Because you have no time for your family, but you may be rich, all right? Then you can attack the middle market. And here you may handle 10, 15 sittings a week. You'll have a very dignified quality of life. You'll have a lot of time for your peer group. You will be chasing your higher standards, PPA qualifications, BIPP qualifications, and so on. You will have time for your family, your wife and your children. You will enjoy life and you will have self-respect. And you will be quite comfortably off as well, I have no doubt. Or, like Paul Kay, you may decide to attack the top end of the market, in which case you will make quite certain that your work is more expensive than everybody else's because you know that that is the only way your clients can tell you're the best. You must be because you charge the most. And you will handle probably 4 or 5 sittings a week. I'm not advocating it, I'm describing it. And that is just the beginning, because it isn't one or the other. If you wish, it is possible for us to handle these different market levels in the same studio environment. It is possible for us. We do. And by we, I mean we in CoverGirl. It's what we do. Let me explain it. It's what I call the aeroplane philosophy of pricing. This is a man sitting in an aeroplane, and he's looking at an album, and in the album is a picture of a full aeroplane. How do the flight managers fill that plane? Let me explain. In the airplane, you have got first-class passengers, and behind them, you've got business class passengers, and behind them, there are economy class passengers. What's going on? Behind them, there are advanced purchase passengers, paying even less. What's happening? And there are staff paying 10%. They're all sitting in the same plane, and they all arrive at the same destination at the same time. And not one of them turns to another and says, and how much did you pay then? It doesn't occur to them, does it? They accept the different booking standards. It's different market levels to fill the plane. Same environment or similar environment, different market levels. And we do that in CoverGirl. We have our premium price sittings. They all pay the same for enlargements, but we pull them in by different pricing of the sitting. Some just pay their session fee. In fact, they're the premium price customers. Others will pay half price. We'll write to them. They didn't agree to that, so we write to them later and we say, if you come in within the next 7 days, you may have a half price sitting. It's a condition. It's like advanced purchase. Others will come in from those black and white ads in the newspapers. They've won competitions. And that's how we fill the gaps. So we get to the 95% occupancy. We can have princesses and we can have typists and taxi drivers sitting in the same studio environment. If they can do it in the air, it can be done on the ground in the same way. And there's no reason why not. And that's how we're doing our pricing. And wall furniture includes a frame. There it is, you saw it. When somebody asks in our studio, how much is that? It includes the frame. If you buy a car, you don't expect to go out without the tires, do you? It's the same with this. Wall decor includes a frame. Discounts. I'm not talking about the special offers. We discussed those in the first half. That's a special offer. I'm talking about what happens when I add up at the end. I look them in the eye. I tell them how much it is. And he says, and what is my discount? And so I start laughing, don't I? And then he laughs, and then she laughs, and then they suddenly realize what a very good joke he's made. And very often, that's the end of it. But in the real world, it isn't always. And he still bounces back and says, what is my discount? They're not looking for money. They can afford it. What they're looking for is the feel-good factor. So what I do is I pick up the picture of Joan, and I say, Joan, this picture, the one that hasn't, whatever it is that hasn't been ordered, they nearly ordered, this picture of you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an 8x10 of this for you, free, with my compliments, to thank you for such a wonderful order. Oh, thank you very much. That's wonderful. In other words, I hold on to the value of the order and I give away paper, which is so inexpensive. It's worth quite a lot to her, but it's very inexpensive to us. And apologize. Just say sorry. When they come in, they have a problem. It may take them 5 minutes. They may shout, they may rant, they may rave. When they're spent, never interrupt them. Wait till they get there. When they've run out of breath, then they will hear your every word. I love complaints. They're my favorite customers. It's made them come in again, hasn't it? And I have their undivided attention. They're not indifferent. They want to know. And it doesn't actually matter what you do for them because they want the solution. And just say sorry, it's all you have to do. And put your telephone number on your awning. Look, here's mine. There it is up on the awning. And what it means is that when people come by, they can telephone me, like that. And it's not as silly as it sounds. You see, whenever anybody phones to make a booking in our studio, just as in yours, we say to them, how did you know about us? And very often these days, they'll say, what do you mean? I'm stuck in the traffic outside your studio, so I phoned you. And if you haven't got your phone number on your awning, it really is worth doing. Go for the jugular. Photographers love to talk. But if they're phoning, very often they're phoning to book. And just go for it. She says, how much is an 8 by 10? You find out it's for the anniversary. You find when the occasion is, would you like to come in on Monday or Tuesday? Go for it. And hot shots. We're on the home run now. Look at this. These are the pictures that sell every time that you take them. All I'm doing now is summing up the evening for you. What are the qualities of pictures that sell every time that Paul Kay takes them? Well, the first is that he gives them variety. And the second is he gives them that consistency. Do you remember? None of this rosette in the eye stuff. We're talking now about pictures that are taken for clients. Every one of them so good it's difficult to choose. Consistency. And we talked about that little child with a teddy bear, and we all went, ah, didn't we? We give them ah appeal. And of course, we're not in any way suggesting that we should give up our integrity as creative artists. In fact, it's very important because we're very likely to create new hotshots. So it's an important element in the mix. So let's have an experiment there and adjust those goals. Forget this, I mean, don't say forget the PPA award. That is different. We go for that as well, but that is for our peer group. For our clients, we adjust our goal to make every picture so good that it's difficult to choose. And every shot has your signature on it, so if it isn't good enough, don't take it. They're all so good, it's difficult to choose. This is the music to your ears. And here is why. Look at these pictures. 3/4 of them looking at the camera. If they're looking off camera, they're looking right off camera, and for a reason. It's an effect shot. Look at the consistency. Look at the variety. Look at the detail. These are the qualities that create a series of pictures that will sell in an album. And Paul is superb at it. Photography from the sales point of view then, and if we're saying to please your salesman, we're really saying to please your client, aren't we? What do I need? Give me the coverage. The more the better. The more pictures you give me, the more I can sell for you. And give me the expression. Expression, expression, and expression. Attractive expressions, not too smiley because we want lasting expressions. None of this nose in the air, smell under the nose stuff. Give us eye contact. That's what sells. And groups looking in the same direction, obviously. If the cuff is like this, she will not buy it. They see the detail every time. It's the one thing they see. You may be a mediocre photographer, but if you are good with the clients, they will have a positive attitude towards your pictures. You may be a fantastic photographer, but if you do not give them a good experience, they will have a negative attitude towards those pictures before they even see them. Bedside manner is very, very important. And of course, everyone's so good it's difficult to choose. And if you get these in place, we will have what we call a dream world sale. The order will fly. Portrait albums, increased sales, and bookings. I've said it all evening. I'm not going to elaborate. And that brings me to the final tip of the evening. And this tip is so good that it's going to pay for your bulletin on its own. And I mean that, which is why I bring it to the end. It is worth $235 on its own, and when you hear it, you'll hear why. 2 final anecdotes for you for the evening before you go home, and you'll love them both. Do you remember I told you when we introduced the 11 by 14 album, do you remember I said it took a whole year before we sold one? A whole year. Let me tell you how it happened. I had a Nigerian client, a different man to the one I've told you about before. This man spent many tens of thousands of dollars on this particular day, and when he'd finished, he stood up from that couch like this. And he started walking around the studio as if he owned it. And I think he probably did at this stage. And finally, I got control of him again, as it were, and he sat down again, and he thought I'd finished. And I said, Chief, what you want to let me do, you want to let me choose the 30 best pictures that Paul has ever taken for you. And I'm going to put them in an album like this. I didn't tell him the size. I said, let me choose the pictures. And he looked at it as quickly as that. And he banged it on the table. And he said, yes. I'd sold my first album, my first 11:14 ever. So I wrote down 11 by 14 album. And I looked up and I said, how many? And he said, 50. He did, and it's on the back of your application form. Mark Roberts, the president of Art Leather, he says, a guy who can sell 50 11 by 14 albums to one client must be doing something right. And it doesn't stop there. This is the last one. They can say to you, I want one copy. And you can still say how many. I have a client who is a queen. She is married to a king, not the British queen. Now, I visit this palace every year, and I have done for 5 years. Some years, she sits with me on her couch, and we order the pictures together. And other years, I don't know why, she'll sit in one room over here, and she has me sat in another room over here, and the maid runs between us. And on the occasion I'm describing, the maid brought me a proof, and she said, Her Highness want one copy of this picture in this size. So I wrote down negative number 4, 24 by 30, and I gave it back to the maid, and I said, would you please ask Her Highness how many? The maid frowned like you're frowning, and she walked back to the Queen, and then she came back to me and she said, Her Highness says 3. I'm not saying that this only works with royalty. What I'm saying is it works with royalty as well. But think about it. If they only say 2, you've doubled the order. And that's why it's such a valuable tip. It's worth thousands, many thousands of dollars per year in your studio, that one idea. Look, I mean, there he is. He's no longer fighting. He's very happy with his picture. But if you ask your clients how many, this is how they will leave your studio. And as I keep saying to you, that is worth far more than $235. Now, not many of you have brought me your application forms. I know you wanted to see the whole story before you did it. Now is your chance. Check the box that says both editions, because both editions of that bulletin are free. You will receive those free editions for 3 months, and they will include all these tips written up in detail by me, better than I've told them to you tonight. You'll have them on your desk like an ongoing seminar, and you will love it. If one of you in every 3 drops out before it costs you anything, I know that. You will not offend me. The other 2 will have derived the $235 worth of value, and they will run on, and I will be very happy with that too. But please, I need those forms tonight for you to have your 3 months free. So bring them up to me now before you leave the room, and I thank you for being such a wonderfully attentive audience. Thank you. Thank you.